stumbling down the road with Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff as she carries stones, digs holes, and wheels her shovels on her way. This road is the real path. It is never easy and never clear, but always entertaining. This journey has not been a seated event, as Bridgette walks, runs, stumbles, carries, digs, drags, laughs, fights, sings, prays, dances, kicks, screams, and oftentimes falls.
Hey, everybody. It is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes. It is your Saturday edition. And I'm your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and I will be your host for Carrying Stones and Digging Holes for the next 2 hours. Hey, you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can look at all the ways that you can fend us. Don't fend us. You can fund us. We do heirloom seed packages. If you just want to toss us a few bucks. Also, we do advertising. That's one of the ways that I support our station. We have website advertising that's really darn affordable. And I have my healthcare business online. Oop. And hold on one second with my guest. It is an audio only show. I'm giving my guest some information. There you go. Awesome. All right. So also you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Remember, we are 100% listener supported. All of us work. We all volunteer to do this work. We don't get paid. And so we just ask that you help keep our amazing. And I was on yet another radio network on Friday, and so I have to give big kudos for how amazing our staff is who helps us to produce these shows, and how well they work, and how good the sound is, and how wonderful everything is, even though we have glitches. So I have to give big kudos to my Revolution Radio people too, because I realized how good it is on Friday. So also you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can find me. So Wednesday edition, Saturday edition, the Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. And you can go to schedule, click on schedule, go to Studio A, scroll down, the B with the flower, that's me, click on it, the thumbnail, and you can get back page, which has details about me and the show and a whole bunch of ways that you can contact me. And if you want to just contact me, don't want to do all that, you can contact me at consciousnessofelconomics@gmail.com. Also, if you want to throw me a few bucks, donate to me, you can donate to me at that email for PayPal. All right. So anyway, so on with the show. All right. So my guest, and I'm going to let him pronounce his whole name, Taansen, and then I'm going to let him pronounce his last name, because
Taansen Fairmont.
Yeah, I might get it botched up. So anyway, so we have Taansen on, and he's going to talk to us about a lot of amazing things that he is helping the public with. A lot of things that a lot of people in, we'll just say common law or alternative law, are doing on their own. But his business is kind of the first business where actually just general people from the public can actually get the help that they need from his business in doing some of these common law procedures and remedies. So I'm going to let him go ahead and give us a little bit of a background about himself so everybody can get to know him. And also I'm going to have him give out a website link so that people can start looking at that information as well right now while we have a 2-hour conversation with them. So go ahead.
Hi, Bridgette.
Hi, good morning.
Great, good morning. Thank you. How's the sound?
It's great. You're doing great.
Okay, everybody. The website is www.freedomabounds.com. So freedom, I think everyone in this audience is familiar with that concept. F as in Friday, or freedom, or friendship, freedomabounds.com, freedomabounds.com. So we're talking about the creme de la creme of remedies. Many of you have been familiar with hundreds of different approaches to solutions to tyranny, solutions to violations of our rights that has been going on for centuries throughout this planet. And we have sifted through those, my team and I, since the early 90s, since the 80s, and we have found a few gems and diamonds that are consistently helping people, alleviating suffering, liberating people from bondage, and bringing new freedom. So that is what this is about, and there's successes. So there's no need to continue thinking there's hopelessness, there's despair, there's frustration. There's no need to continue thinking we have to go up against tremendous battles and struggles. There are easier solutions. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Did you wanted to talk about background, or you have?
Yeah, just give us some.
You know me a little bit too. You have some.
Yeah, well, what I do is I usually, the first time I have people on, I let people hear about their background of how they kind of have gotten to the place that they are now, because there's usually gems in there for people, because a lot of people are trying to make transitions. So where were you? How do you get started? What's your focus? Obviously, you have a big spiritual focus. And so just give people kind of a little bit of a background, as long as you want, as short as you want. It's totally entirely up to you. Just about, how you started off on the planet and how you, slowly meandered your way to where you are now.
Well, I'm from the United States. My father was in the Air Force. He was a peacemaker, though. He was not one of those war hawks, thank heaven. But he was transferred every 2 or 3 years around the country. So I grew up moving all over the country and lived in Germany when I was 11, 12, 13, 14. That was fun. Got to see Europe at a young age. And then started living in Western states. And I've always felt more at home in the Western states. But the whole country is a sacred country, as you know. And then he went into the U.S. Civil Service, but was continued to associate with military installations. So I came to respect a lot of the military. I got to hear the stories of the incredible corruption from my father in the U.S. government. He would come home, and at the dinner table we'd be talking about unbelievable, bizarre waste and misdirection of funds, and ridiculous conflicts, and so I got to hear that from a young age, and but we were also very deeply interested in spirituality, and we went through a lot of the Christian devotion. I would say went very deeply into the Christian devotion, and this evolved into a more global view and a more global embracement, I guess you would say, of all religions. It reminds me of the funny thing that Bob Hope once said. He said, "I honor all religions. I figure why blow the hereafter on a technicality." So then this evolved into starting various kinds of meditation. I went through the psychedelic era. I went through yoga. I tried lots of things, and I had a breakthrough with transcendental meditation as taught by Maharishi, and went to the university in Iowa and also in Europe, became a teacher, became what's called a governor, which just means a teacher who has advanced training. And that was in the 70s, and have been benefiting physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally ever since then, and helping a lot of other people with it. And so the development of consciousness is what that's all about. So that appeals really to all paths, all religions, all cultures, all persuasions, all philosophies. It's really about raising consciousness so that one is more awake, more expanded. There is comprehension. There is the ability to focus. Attention span expands. One is just more awake, and that is stabilized in the physiology. It's not just an idea or concept or an imagination. It's scientifically able to be verified. So this is something that you can directly experience in bliss. And then fast forward to the 80s and 90s, and I guess around 90 is when some people first introduced me to that the income tax was something that was imposed on this country and was not really constitutional and was not really really required. It was a voluntary thing, and IRS has a strange definition of voluntary, as most people listening know, but that started me on that whole path, and I started studying the truth about that and disengaged from it from about 1990, and disengaged from the whole idea of giving money over to an international crime syndicate and redirecting that money to more life-supporting causes that are helping make this world a better place. Well, that started me into the area of freedom technology. I got involved with the Free Enterprise Forum, and then in 96, Investors International by Dr. Van Lin. Some of you may have heard of that or attended seminars, and they invited me to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, to be a keynote speaker in August of 96, and among other speakers who were talking about how to raise investment yields, how to set up tax shelters, offshore trusts, improve asset protection, I was the one who came in with the message about sovereignty consciousness, which was basically an amalgamation of the spiritual and the historical, legal, or political status, because it's essentially who we are, what our status is, that determines what happens to us. That's true both spiritually as well as legally. And so you may be familiar with the fact that there are no less than six U.S. Supreme Court cases that say that Americans are sovereigns without subjects. This was a new concept. It got rid of the old European monarchy idea that there are hierarchies, of the king and the queen and the duke and the duchess and all of that. And, America said, nope. The original 13th Amendment was no titles of nobility before they replaced it. So attorneys, which are esquire, are titles of nobility, which is in violation of that original amendment. And it was supposed to be, we are all kings and queens. We are all princes and princesses. We are all nobility equally. And we agree amongst each other according to merits, common sense, common law, ethics, universal natural law. We agree to be good to each other, and we don't need anybody to be forcing us to be good to each other because we're doing it voluntarily. And that was a beautiful original idea of the founding parents of this country, a very high, noble ideal. But we look at what's happened since then, and I wondered what happened. Why have we deviated? Why have we not lived up to that? And it appeared to me that there is insufficient level of baseline consciousness. Because guess what? The higher one's consciousness, automatically the better one's behavior. You can give someone thousands of rules and regulations from a religion or from a government. It doesn't matter. You can give them do's and don'ts. If they're in a low state of consciousness, they're not going to be able to live up to it. They're just not. It's just not going to happen. And that is why you hear about corruption in the big churches. You hear about corruption in governments. You hear about corruption everywhere where there are lots of rules and regulations. There are violations of them, aren't there? Everyone knows that. It's a very common knowledge. So why don't rules and regulations work? Why don't they solve mankind's social problems? It's because the level of consciousness is too low. You find someone in a high state of consciousness, and guess what? With or without rules and regulations, they're good people. They're harmless, they're helpful, they're life-supporting, they're respectful, they're harmonious, they're benevolent, they have love in their hearts, they get along with people, they speak sweetly and nicely, and they are usually either hard workers or high producers, or at the very least, they're harmless. They'll sit and maybe just radiate good vibrations, but at the very least, they're going to be not causing any problems in society. They're generally free of addictions, they're free of crime, they're free of, the usual deficiencies that plague mankind. That's what high consciousness does. It just makes people good. It makes them harmonious with natural law, common law, universal law, all the basic, ideals of every religion and every tradition of culture, of philosophy throughout history. So my message of sovereignty consciousness was that we can be, and we already are, really, kings and queens, sovereigns, if we simply wake up to it and start living it from within. And therefore, then our relationship to taxes, our relationship to debts, to banking, to commerce, to business, to government changes. Have you ever known of a great avatar, a great enlightened saint who was bowing down to politicians and banks and paying their taxes and kowtowing, like a subject slave? No, I haven't. Every great enlightened master has been a sovereign to this day, and there are many walking among us on this planet today, and politicians bow down to them. So that is the natural consequence of awakening, and that is why many of the controllers on this planet, the tyrants, the ones who've wanted to enslave mankind, have not wanted high consciousness to manifest. That's why they have repressed and suppressed the ability of these teachings to get into mass education. They haven't wanted everyone to wake up and be sovereign and be independent and be on their own. But that is precisely the challenge of the human soul. The human soul is here to wake up completely and be who we ultimately, potentially can be, would be, could be, should be, right? To be the sovereigns that we were given to be from within. So you don't talk this way to a police officer. You don't use the word sovereign. They're gonna be very offended by that and maybe try to look for a reason to lock you up. So you don't want to go around flaunting this language in the wrong places. Obviously, you want to use common sense. You want to be reasonable. You want to be just practical in daily life. You want to use documents that facilitate your freedom in a natural way. For example, a Social Security number. I used to think in the 90s that I wanted to dissociate from the Social Security number, the super slave number, right? Then I finally got to start learning the UCC, and I learned that, well, really, that doesn't represent me. It represents the straw man. It represents the kind of sesquiquade trust that was set up in all capital letters to represent me. And then I realized there's a separation already there from the beginning. And that SS number is simply a number that applies to a fictitious entity, and I can use it in commerce as a sovereign. Why not? I have the right to use whatever facilities are in the system that I wish. I should not have to go to great lengths to separate myself and protect myself. I can make use of the tools of the system, including Federal Reserve notes, including Social Security numbers, including their ID documents. I can make use of these tools and live conveniently, comfortably, without being in violation of either their rules or my own principles. And that is how we have focused instead on helping families simply defeat debts and set up affairs to be out of the main harm's way when it comes to taxes. And the two simplest ways that we've found that have been working, that have 100% success rates, are on the debt side, to use our Liberty debt elimination system to cancel debts. So people who have credit card debt, student loans, that sort of thing, are simply able to use some letters that we provide and legally cancel 100% of that debt. We are the only company I know of, Brilliance in Commerce, that has created a system that attacks 100% of the debt on the basis that they never loaned anything, and that has not failed since the year 2002. So for 17 years and running, we have a no defeat rate. This means that any customer who has followed the instructions and has sent the letters as instructed and did not give up has had those debts go away. So our website is full of victory letters and success stories, and very few of our people have had to go to court, and those who have gone to court have received the assistance of our legal team and have also had victories almost 100% of the time. And usually the only failures, again, have been when someone got tired, stressed, ran out of money, and our legal team charges very little, peanuts compared to attorneys. But still, if you don't have a few $100s, you don't have a few $100s. So some people run out of money, or they run out of patience, they run out of time, they run out of willingness to continue. If the court case drags out, those are rare cases. But most of the time, it's within 1, 2, or 3 court filings, the case is done. If the customer had been sued, we defend, we guide them through the defense, and the plaintiff will give up, they'll dismiss. We have some funny cases too, like where in one case we filed the rebuttal to the opposing counsel's accusations, and they didn't know how to respond. They have no defense to our allegations, and they didn't say anything. They didn't file anything more for 6 months, so finally the judge just terminated the case for lack of response. So, we get some funny ones. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun because we've had nothing but consistent successes for years now. So, like I say, most of our customers don't have to go to court, but the few who have also been successful in winning. And we've had so many people say, you've been the answer to our prayers. We're about what works. And later in this discussion, if you wish, we can get into the various other approaches that have been used out there to either, set off, debt, set off, or use bonded registered bills of exchange or promissory notes and things like that to pay, supposedly, the debts under UCC. We can discuss that if you wish, but we have found that those have such a low success rate. We're interested in what works. We're interested in alleviation of suffering. We're interested in helping families actually experience the practical result of freedom. And the other side of it is taxes. We don't directly consult in how to get free directly individually, although we do outsource that to one of the best people in the country. And so on our website, under legal help, you'll see revocation of election, and you will see the actually number one best method I have seen in 29 years, since 1990, and I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I've known Irwin Schiff personally. I've known Lynn Meredith personally. I've known Eddie Kahn personally. I've known a lot of the leaders in the untaxed movement personally. Royal Hardy. I've known these people. And I've seen and tried or known of people who have tried and seen all the seminars and been there. And I've seen what failed. I've seen what worked. I've seen people go to jail. I've seen people lose assets. And I've seen what works. And this is the one with the 100% success rate. This is the silver bullet we were looking for. This is the one that's authorized by Congress, and so they can't go against it. This is the one that has perfected a particular style of the revocation of election that is filed with exactly the right agencies in exactly the right way with exactly the right wording. And it has had no retaliation, no failure, no rebuttal. And so that is freeing people. But again, that's on our website under legal help. The revocation of election is what has been assisting people. But again, we outsource that to our expert in Texas who takes care of that for us. But our company provides the House of Freedom International Natural Law Trust. And this trust is the state-of-the-art, latest evolution after decades and generations of refinement and advancement and tweaking and improvement of the very best trust laws from all over the world, so that it is truly international, truly sovereign, truly above and beyond the limitations of any particular legal jurisdiction, and that has been in practice actually working and actually protecting people's assets, that is untaxable, that is an exception to the filing requirements, and therefore any commerce, including salaries, including business income, consulting income, investment returns, whatever assets one places into this trust becomes protected from any kind of tax exposure or tax liability. So that's the easiest way for most people who are afraid or who work for big corporations and are concerned about going the non-tax way individually, can just use one of these trusts, set that up, start moving assets into it, start transferring commerce into it, and then it automatically becomes the vehicle of protection. So if you can defeat debts and taxes, you have defeated two of the major wheels of the cabal's enslavement machine. And that's what our little company has been doing. We're not very well known. We've probably only helped a few thousand people directly, a few other thousand indirectly by influence and by benefit. So we're not major in terms of millions of customers or anything like that. But we do have what we believe are two of the best solutions out there.
Awesome. I really like the whole way that you communicated all of that. I wanted to say for people out there that haven't heard some of this information before, some of this terminology that's being used, I completely understand. I started building kind of a language with people 30 years ago around these subjects and didn't really utilize them or apply them or knew where to go in order to get the information that I needed until 2009, when the state and the government decided to come after my private practice. And they served me fake cease and desist. At that time, I didn't really know what was going on or how it was going on. So the first thing that I was going to do was fight. And that's kind of what happens at first before you get over that hump into more of the consciousness where you realize, like, I don't have to fight. I just have to educate myself. And who am I really, right? You get to the point of who am I really? And who do they think that I am? And sometimes you just got to take a different approach to reapply who you are into the system. So a lot of people will wake up because they're in a, emergency situation. The IRS is coming after them. They got fired. They can't make money anymore. This happens, who knows, whatever the fire is that starts the crisis. And that's usually the point where most people wake up and they need help, but that help is really not available out there unless you know people. I was lucky enough to know a local common law group in my area. I was introduced to them, and they weren't sure how to help me in healthcare, kind of healthcare rules and laws and ideas, but they did start to help me to change my perception of who I was and how I was going to operate in the system, and then how to actually do my own paperwork. And it was a long, difficult journey, especially to learn all this stuff while you've got all this debt hanging over your head and you're not bringing in an income anymore. So this is the way that I look at this company is really important, because you can actually make this transition before you have a fire, somewhere in your life where it becomes like some kind of emergency. You can actually take care of it before the emergency sets in, and that you need some kind of remedy, you need some kind of salvation, and so the approach is different. You're approaching it in a conscious manner. I should just take care of all this stuff now so that I'm not going to have these stressors.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly. And then, when things go wrong, which, things do, that's just how this world operates. Things are up and down. You're not going to have those up and down stresses, and you're not going to have to try to go find a fire department with a long hose to come over and put out your fire. You'll already have the remedies that are underneath you, and just removing your debt and what that can do for your consciousness. Because if you're out there pounding the pavement, you're doing your job 9 to 5, you're not getting paid enough for your slave service. And then on top of it, you have all these debts. And this, one of the things I was thinking about the other day was, I don't do debt. After 2009, and I changed kind of how I related to the world, one of the things I decided was I wasn't going to get myself in debt. I don't make enough money, to apply for credit cards and all these different things and loans. And I just really decided I was going to live in a spiritual way, kind of with what I make, or, what comes, which is not an easy task. But that was just kind of my choice to do it. But I was realizing, how much every little thing costs. People are being, gouged because of the inflation of the dollar. Everything is getting smaller and costs more. And then they have you coming and going with all these different fees from, just about every place that you do business with, which means you have to keep working, and you have to work your bunzolies off in order to, just not even survive. So even if you just kind of look into how can I eliminate my debt, the debts I have, to get them, basically X'd off the record, because the person that is holding that debt is not who I am. And so therefore, in a way, you're not really, that's kind of how you have to kind of look at it. That debt was incurred under a different archetype, let's just say, of who I am, that they created. So what kind of debts do you guys work with? Do you guys work with loans? What kind of debts do you fall under? Because a lot of people might not know exactly what kind of debts that they have that your systems could help them to eliminate. And what does eliminate actually mean?
Okay, first was good debt and bad debt. Good debt is debt where you have perhaps borrowed business expansion capital, and then you invest that in your business, and hopefully, if things go well, make a profit and do some good for society, expand your business, you're able to help more people, and that's the proper use of, that's capitalism in its best application, right? You borrow capital. Yeah, they created it out of thin air. Yeah, it's the Mandrake mechanism. Yeah, it's funny money, but you're doing good with it. You're distributing it for investment in creating more furniture. If you're a furniture business, and more people have chairs and sofas and they're comfortable, and whatever your business is, presumably you're doing something good for society with it, and you pay back that. You play the game. You pay it back with interest, and then you can borrow more, and you've got a good credit rating and so forth. That's what we call good debt. Bad debt is where you lost your job, you're using your MasterCard or your Visa to survive, to pay your rent, to pay groceries until you get a job again, or you had medical bills that you couldn't afford, and you really didn't have the money, and so you had to borrow it for life survival issues. And then you're 20,000, 30,000 in debt, 40,000, 50,000, whatever. And it's a burden now. And you're struggling, and it's very, very hard to pay it off. And many times families default on it. And that is where the system designed centuries ago, in fact, millennia ago, I mean, way back in, what was it? The time of Jesus, when they had the money changers in the temples, and before that, Babylon, and throughout the world. It's every ancient culture has had this system. Today, we just have a modern version of it. And a few centuries ago, the bankers got this idea, well, if we want to take over countries, it's a lot easier to do it through the money system than through armies. Armies, it's really messy. You go in and you conquer, and people don't like it, and they resist, and then as soon as they get a chance, they overthrow you, But they got the idea, okay, well, we can just do it more stealth, more quietly, and we'll just go in and take over the money system. So there you have Baron von Rothschild's statement in the 1700s, give me control of the nation's currency, and I care not who makes its laws. And has anyone in this audience read The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin? I highly recommend it. We recommend it for everyone because by reading that book, you understand our money system. There is a more collegiate, stuffy one called Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullen. Basically explains the same thing in more high PhD economics level. But if you want a book that tells the same thing with pictures, illustrations, names, dates, places, reads like a mystery story, it's a page turner, you can hardly put it down, read The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is about 1910. The bankers gathered off the coast of Georgia on Jekyll Island and conceived the idea for the Federal Reserve System. And then, of course, it got pushed through with bribes and coercion at Christmas in 1913. And so that became our banking system, our money system, our central bank. So the history before that was how to take over countries. And you may have heard of Albert Pike, who was one of those 33rd degree Masons and all these secret societies and so forth. And he and his cohorts plotted and planned on how to, create World War I, World War II, how to get control of countries. And they did it. So it only took them 20 years from 1913 to 1933. It just took them that 20 years to bankrupt the U.S. government. U.S. government declared bankruptcy in 1933. House Joint Resolution, you've heard of it, yes? HJR 192 of June 5th, 1933 was when they declared it and made all Americans, their bodies, our labor, and our property, the backing for the money system. Now, what does that do? It depends on your level of consciousness, right? Does that mean if we're the backing for the money system that we're slaves because we're responsible for the debts? Or does that mean that we're the creditors? If we're the backing for the money system, doesn't that mean we're the creditors? We're the sources of the credit?
And the depositors, we're the creditors, we're the depositors, we're all of it.
You bet. So it all, you see, that's what I mean by consciousness. That's how you look at it. And when you reorient yourself to realize that we are the creditors, that is how we are succeeding with the Liberty debt elimination system, because we challenge the bank to prove that it is a creditor. And they can't, and they haven't. For 17 years and running, not once have they had any defense to that allegation. In the book, Creature from Jekyll Island, he talks about the Mandrake mechanism, which is how they create money out of thin air. All right, let's bring it down to basics for everyone. When you get a Visa or a MasterCard and $5,000 or $10,000 of credit shows up on that card, did you think that that company has loaned? They had, say, $1 billion in their account and they're $10,000 down because they loaned it to you? No, that is not how it works. They had $1 billion yesterday. They put $10,000 on your card. They still have $1 billion today. There's been no change in their account level. Now, when you start borrowing and spending that money on that card and then paying it back, supposedly back, I put the word back in quotation marks, to the bank, their accounts go up. It's free gravy for them. So they created it out of thin air, supposedly loaned it to you. Now you're paying them the tribute with interest. And people say, yes, but the merchant, has to be paid because he delivered goods and services. And I agree. He did, and he should, and he has been. So the merchant should be paid, and the customer should receive the goods and services. Absolutely. But the banking system has been like the mafia, inserting itself in the middle of that transaction and saying, give us our cut. So now you could say, well, in their defense, you could say, yes, but they're providing a useful service by creating a money system. Okay, let's conceive for a moment that maybe they are due something because they did create a service. All right, they have a medium of exchange, the Federal Reserve note, right? And they administer all the systems that monitor that and provide that, okay? Well, maybe a few cents, maybe even a fraction of a cent, because it's such big money. We're talking trillions and so on, of dollars. So to maintain the money system, perhaps a little percentage that was openly agreed upon by everyone, right, could be a fee, a reasonable fee. But instead of paying 110%, which is 100% of the principal plus 5, 10, or 15% interest, it's perhaps 0.5%, a half of 1% instead of 110 or 115%. You see the big difference there? So this money system has not been fair. It has not been benevolent. It has not been in service to mankind. And there are videos on the internet, we have some of them on our website, that demonstrate how if you have a debt-based money system where you borrow $100 into existence, but you have to pay back 105 or 110, where does that extra 5 or 10 come from? So it says on the dollar bill, Federal Reserve note. It's a promissory note. It is no longer redeemable in gold or silver. It is a debt instrument. It is not money. Therefore, 100% of all of the money in circulation has been borrowed into existence. It's all debt. And so if you owe more than you borrowed because of the interest, you have to borrow more, you have to create more debt, right, to pay that extra 5, 10, 15% interest. So it just keeps escalating and escalating and escalating, and that's why Today, it's what, 20 trillion or 30 trillion or however big that federal debt is. That's the supposed debt to the banking cartel that the U.S. Government and its people owe, supposedly. You ever heard of Bo Greitz? He was a Marine. I saw a seminar once when he had a wooden coin. It was about 10 feet in diameter up in front of the room, and it was covered in gold foil or something. And and he wrote at that time, this is back in the 90s, I think the debt was about 8 trillion or something. He wrote $8 trillion on it. He said, okay, they created the debt out of thin air. We're going to pay it back with money out of thin air. So he just created a big coin and wrote $8 trillion on it. He says, here, we're now paying your debt back. So ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, that is how, in a simplified explanation, the system works. And how families are able to get free of the debt is by using our letters, which are engineered very finely now. We've distilled the essence after years and years and years of experience with this. We revise our system every year, sometimes 2 and 3 times a year. Do you hear the blue jay in the background? I hope it's not.
No, okay. I like animal visits even during shows. I don't.
Okay. All right, I got some birds out the window here.
So we're gonna just coming in to let people know that we're gonna be going to a 5-minute break at 56 till, and then we'll just mute and we'll let the promos and everything run. We'll come back at 1 after. So if anybody needs, doesn't want to listen to the promos or needs a break, they can get up and get a break. So we've just got a few more minutes. I was thinking about how funny that is to, make a coin and then send it back. And, we have one thing that I've learned about remedies or common law or, paperwork or whatever people want to call it is that it takes years and years, and you have to find people to study with for the most part for things to have gotten to where they're at, because a lot of this stuff is hidden. And it's really difficult to find. And the legal system that operates doesn't want you to know about it. And in some cases, they went through all of law school and never knew that there were other types of law. So when you get to a point where you have documents and you can source law and all these kinds of things, it's taken a lot of years of education, because it's not an education that, you can take people's seminars and their workshops and look at their paperwork and maybe dabble in it, but it takes a long time to get to a point where you have a lot of things working. And so it's not a really easy road. And a lot of you probably out there who've gone down this, I like to call it practicing sovereignty. I get away from saying I'm a sovereign. I like to say I'm practicing sovereignty. But you get to a point in a lot of this, and you want to make it easy on yourself and learn and use documents that are already working for people. And it is, I've known a lot of people that have come and gone, and they still, one of the things that I really like about what Taansen said was that you have to get over in the hump into the consciousness. So past the battle. So something has happened, it's, roughed up your fur on your back. You don't know what to do. You're scared and afraid. And so the first thing that's going to come out the gate is that you're going to want to fight the system. And there are a lot of people out there that are doing paperwork where they want to prove and they want to be right. And they want to be in a totally different system than they're in. And they haven't gotten over the hump into consciousness of full consciousness going, hey, I can just stand in balance in the middle of all this stuff, whether I have a social security number or I don't have a social security number, all these different things and all these different accounts that I have, right, underneath my corporation that they designed. We should be in the middle of both and utilizing both sides, being in balance. And that's kind of like what coming into a different framework of where you're standing consciously matters, because once you get out of the fight, you wake up and you go, look, this is just not working, because light and dark are always going to fight. You've got light comes up and then darkness has to fight it. And then you have darkness that rises up and then the light has to come and fight it. So you take yourself out of those battles into a higher consciousness and just stand in the middle of it all, be in balance of it all, and utilize it all. Or, instead of be in the fight. And if you're still in the fight, you're going to be attracted to a lot of paperwork that's probably going to punish you.
Totally agreed.
In some way, shape, or form. And so you want to get past that. You want to get past the fear and the fighting, like a caged, dog that's, been beaten. You got to get out of that mindset so that you can kind of rise above it. And, you can, I like, the medicine totem mouse. It's about scrutiny, where we're in the scrutiny all the time and we're obsessed, and there's, can be paranoia and all that other stuff, or there's like the ego, which sees everything and takes everything in, right, and is part of the everything, and can rise above it and look at it. And that's the difference in consciousness, looking at everything from a mouse size to rising above it all and taking a look at all of it clearly. So consciousness highly 100% matters, and who you think you are matters. I remember hearing somebody say, if you're going to deliver, paperwork to a court, or because most of us have to do that stuff on our own, that don't do it with anger or hostility or put it together, but find laughter and humor and submit the documents in an energetic way, where I'm doing this in love to educate these people in this system.
There you go. Beautiful.
And not attacking them and trying to prove to them who I am and that I'm right. That's never going to work. So I like Taansen's approach to
Did
it.
I mention to you why attorneys are buried 12 feet deep when they die instead of the usual 6 feet?
Go ahead. Tell them the punchline.
Because deep down they really are good people.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes before we go on break. Do you want to tell us what the website link is, in case people are like, oh man, I didn't get it at the front, I want to go look at it?
http://freedomabounds.com. freedomabounds.com.
Awesome. So, well, I'm really excited to actually have you on, and I like that you can actually put things into a simpler language. I'm not saying people are simple, but a simpler language so that people can kind of understand it. A lot of the common law people that I had to deal with early on were kind of old school and talked in languaging and were a little bit affronted, kind of when you asked them questions about things that they thought you should know. So I like the fact that you can actually talk to people and you have like a friendly approach, and that you can kind of explain it a little bit simpler for people.
Thank you. We try to minimize the required learning curve.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's super good. Okay, so we have about 1 more minute. So you're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And I'm your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, Saturday edition for Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. So I have a Wednesday and a Saturday edition. So Saturday edition is 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Wednesdays are noon Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can find me on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And you can click on the schedule, look at studio, click on Studio A, scroll down. You'll see the bee with the flower. You can click on that, and there's some background information there about me, my shows, and some links and contact information. So anyway, we'll be back in 5 minutes. And I'm your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, Saturday edition. And yes, I also have a Wednesday edition these days. You can find us at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, all the information that you may need. We're listener supported, so we enjoy having your donations to keep our station thriving and doing well, so that I can continue doing my shows. So anyway, the second hour, I still have the same guest, Taansen, and we are talking about his business and his work helping people to actually do debt elimination and some other really good remedies that he has tested, and they've done really well. And he also talked about how they do upgrade them periodically, so to make sure that all their information and their remedies are in order and good, working good. So Taansen, so in the first hour, well, I wanted to just kind of talk to you a little bit, I guess, in the front of this hour, just about your I have so many different friends that have these really amazing spiritual paths that they follow, and I'm always interested in people's, personal, like, spiritual work that they do, how they balance themselves, things that they read or study or practices that they do, that they utilize, as a part of their spiritual, religion, if you will, spirituality instead of religion. We'll call it spirituality. So do you want to talk to people a little bit, maybe about things that keep you positive or practices that you regularly do, or, how you practice your own spirituality? Are you there? Oh, now can you hear me? Are you there? Uh-oh. He's got like a microphone issue, it looks like. Oh, wait, I heard something. There you are.
I don't know what happened. Okay.
You got bleeped out. But anyway, talk to us about your spirituality, if you heard my little...
Okay, yeah, I was hearing you. I don't know what happened. Okay, well, everyone, I first wanted to thank the listeners, though. Please, Bridgette, thank you, everyone who have been supporting Revolution Radio, because I think Bridgette's doing a beautiful work, a great work. We've only been recently acquainted, and yet it already seems like we're old friends, because we have so much in common and such a parallel mission. And it's a great, great, great show you have. And thank you, everyone, for joining us and spending this time with us, and for participating. So, and one note quickly to segue into the spiritual aspect is that anyone who does the debt elimination system, I aver always that you are contributing to the betterment of the economy. So if you are stopping the tribute to the pretender lenders and redirecting that money to bettering your household, helping your children, paying perhaps for your health to improve your health, perhaps attending educational courses, in some way improving life, you have just bettered the economy by that much. So I just wanted to make that point, that canceling the debts is actually helping the economy. And on the whole topic of spirituality, there's an inner and an outer. If you go inside yourself, all the great religions and spiritual paths have said it's within, right? There is access through the human nervous system to the universal consciousness. That is an experience many people who are listening today may have had. That experience is one where the nervous system gets exposed to what in physics is called the unified field, what religion calls God, what many other systems call pure consciousness. I am presence. We like to use scientific terms so that it's not going to offend people of different spiritual persuasions, so I just use the word unified field. But it's that field that has been called a void, but it's also been called a fullness, an overflowingness, and a source, the source. It's also known as the self, because when one experiences it completely, one realizes, I am not this body, I am not this mind, I'm not even limited to the soul. I am actually the universal self, and all of us are, and there's only one self in existence. And all of us as human beings and animals and plants and ETs and beings from every planet and world in this universe, all of us are actually projections raised from one sun. And that experience is the essence of spiritual enlightenment, of awakening, of self-realization. The experience that it was a dream, it was an illusion, and sometimes a nightmare, that I thought I was this limited being down here enjoying or suffering or going through a drama, right? When really, this human incarnation was simply a very small part of me that went into this adventure for learning purposes, for education, right? And the experience of relaxing and resting deeply into the unbounded ocean of pure bliss consciousness and deep meditation is not an idea, it's not a concept, it's not an imagination, it's not a fantasy, it is a reality that is directly experienced by allowing the focal point of attention to switch from going outward to going inward. It's a 180-degree about face, and it goes inward towards the source of thought. And at the source of thought is this field. It's a field that is here now. It's always in the now. It's never in the past or in the future. It is where eternity is found. And that here and now moment, that here and now experience, that access to the place that is conscious and has been for millions of years in the past and will be for millions of years in the future, that place that is conscious, that is the source of consciousness within us, is our self with a capital S. And that self radiates energy and radiates love, radiates happiness, radiates intelligence, radiates power. And that's what generates creativity. It's what generates thoughts. It's what generates our entire lives. And as we dissolve stress, we get the distortions out of the way so that it flows unimpeded in a harmonious and coherent way into activity and makes our activity productive and fruitful. And the fruit is positive, the fruit is beneficial, the fruit is harmless, the fruit is constructive, it is pleasing to all parties, it is helpful to all parties, it harms no one, and it helps everyone. So that flow of life-supporting life energy from the self comes through into life through what we call love. And as you know, love is the unifying power in creation. And if you were to ask me what my religion is, I would say love. I would say unconditional love. Because that's the essence of all religions. It's the essence of the teachings of all the great teachers. And it's not according to this definition or that definition. It's not higher and lower. It's not like, oh, there's a higher love and there's a lower love. Well, love is the unifying power, so how can it be divided into two different types? You know, if it's the unifying power, it is one thing. And it's a force, it's a power, it's the power, the basis of creation. And it's not like Hollywood movies would have you believe that it's just a color on the rainbow of emotions. Love is not an emotion. And if they think it's an emotion, it's not love. They've got some other idea out there. It's some sort of attraction, some sort of, force, some sort of, craving, but it's not love. The love that we're talking about is the basis of existence. It is the essence and the foundation. It is that which empowers everything else. It's that which harmonizes, holds together, and makes one everything in creation. It's the sum total and the basis and the motive for everything, the foundation on which everything is built. And so, therefore, those who start awakening to it in higher states of consciousness experience it as an ongoing reality, moment to moment, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That makes, guess what, relationships successful, because one is no longer coming from a limited ego identity. One is no longer coming from an idea that, well, if you're not jealous if I go with somebody else, then you don't love me. That's an old dark age idea of a misconception and a misdefinition of what love is. Love is that which gives freedom. Love is that which gives honor and joy and happiness and bliss, and is harmless and does not divide. It does not create divisive influences. It creates harmonious and unifying influences. Love is the power that actually powers everything. And the unified field is one and the same with love. Love is actually the unified field. So the unified field is the isness, the it of the Holy Spirit, of pure consciousness, of the spiritual sky, the I am presence. The Native Americans call it Nagwal. The Aborigines of New Zealand, the Maoris, call it Tekori. There are names all over the world for it. So whatever one calls it, Samadhi, Satori, Nirvana, the Brahman, Atman, it is that place, it is that condition, it is that state deep within us that all of us have most of us fallen asleep to, but can reawaken to. And that deep meditation that one can go into through techniques like Maharishi's Transcendental Meditation, Deepak Chopra's Primordial Sound Meditation, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's Sahaj Samadhi. These are some of the approaches to what we call supreme wisdom of Sri Vidya Raja Yoga, which is the kind of yoga that is royal, Raja, meaning royal, because it's dignified, it's one just sitting with eyes closed, and it's Sri Vidya, which means supreme wisdom, meaning it's effortless. Why is it effortless? Have you ever tried to get into a state of rest? And the peace that is present in pure consciousness is deeply restful. So it cannot be achieved through effort. It cannot be achieved through trying. It is not something you can get to by working at it or being talented or gaining a skill or, working a muscle to get to. So in contrast with techniques that involve hard work, this is the opposite of that. It's really the lazy man's way to enlightenment. But really, it's the intrinsic divine intelligence as well. Do you think that the divine was so stupid as to make our self-realization difficult on purpose, and therefore require us to go through arduous effort to get to it? Even in India, that misconception took over during the Dark Ages. All throughout the world, divisive ideas have permeated the spiritual field. So I'm not being culturally biased here by saying that Western religion or spirituality is inferior. The same misconceptions occurred in the East as well, and that's what darkened the whole world. But there have been certain luminaries who have come out of that darkness and illuminated the truth about all of this and revived the ancient Golden Age wisdom of how it was supposed to be understood. And the way it was supposed to be understood and the way it was actually taught by the great avatars of ancient history was effortlessness. Effortlessness meaning that to go into your own self and rest in your own unbounded ocean of pure bliss consciousness can only be effortless, can only be attained by allowing it, by releasing, by letting go, and going within. Now, there are techniques. Some use the sound mantra, such as transcendental meditation. Others, like vipassana, just have you watching your breathing, watching your thoughts, observing as a witness. Those are the two major highways. My personal preference is the one with the mantra because I find that it is the path of increasing charm. It's the mantra that is not focused on. You don't concentrate on it. You don't hammer away at it. You allow it to float effortlessly in your mind and allow the mind to be drawn to it like music, like a bell ringing, like a charming sound until it gains subtlety. It gets more subtle and more subtle and more subtle, and then it fades away and it fades away, and then it's gone, like the sun setting, going below the horizon, and you find yourself in this state of bliss. Because you're letting go, you're not attaching your attention to it. You're not harping away at repeating it, concentrating on it. You're allowing from the very beginning the process to go effortlessly. So that's how transcendental meditation works. Each student is given his or her own personal sound vibration, which has no meaning. And that sound vibration is almost unique to each different kind of human being, different nervous system, different vibration, okay? And that's why the technique is only taught one-on-one by a teacher. You can't learn it from a book. You can't learn it from a radio show. Can't learn it from watching TV or watching someone speak. It has to be tutored one-on-one because it's a interactive process where the teacher, if he's trained by the master, knows how to guide you into pure consciousness within the first session on the first day. Remember, this is effortless, so you're not having to wait weeks, months, years to get good at it because it's not something to get good at. It's something that is intrinsically built into the human nature already. You already have the ability. You just have to be shown how to get into it. And what the mantra does is it assists the attention from being distracted by outer thoughts, and it gives it a pleasing, other charming, attractive alternative to those distracting thoughts. So don't worry about, oh, I couldn't quiet my mind. My mind's full of thoughts. I can never quiet. Don't worry about that. You don't mind that. That's not something to be concerned with. All you do is you favor this sound vibration that you are given and allow it to pull the mind away, as it were, like in the center of a cyclone, the cyclone of thoughts going around, round, round. Just allow that to be there. You don't resist it. And in this process, you allow your attention to be drawn by the attractive sound of this mantra, this vibration, and effortlessly pulled away from the cyclone and into the eye of the cyclone. And that is when you start feeling this powerful bliss. And it's physical. The heart rate slows down. The brain waves change from beta to alpha to theta, sometimes even delta. And you're wide awake. And scientific research, according to oxygen consumption, has shown that the level of rest goes to twice as deep sleep. When we're awake, which I presume we are right now, your breathing rate is considered, let's put it at a base of 0. When you go into the dream state, when you're in bed at night, it goes down about 4%. So oxygen consumption drops about 4%. When you go into deep sleep, it drops about 8%. Okay, so that means there's an 8% improvement in level of rest. In samadhi, or in pure consciousness, your oxygen consumption on the average will drop 16%. Twice as deep sleep, and yet you're not asleep. You're wide awake. In fact, you're more awake. You're more alert. You can hear the sounds in the room. You're not in a trance. If somebody calls your name while you're in it, you can hear them. And you could respond if you wish to, but generally the feeling is you don't want to. You're so absorbed in this bliss. You're so deep in this wonderful feeling, you'd like it to last forever. It's so wonderful. It's that serenity, that tranquility, that peace. And you feel it from head to toe. It's physical. You feel it flowing in your whole body. You feel the stress melting away. You feel new love and new happiness coming into your heart. That's the first thing that everyone experiences. Everyone experiences more happiness instantly. I mean, talking instantly. We had a funny incident one day when a student came in, and there's a little ceremony to begin the practice where you bring fruit and flowers, and this guy had brought an apple, and you're asked to take your shoes off, and then you go in for the ceremony and the first instruction, and you have your first experience of meditation. And this guy was so nervous. He didn't know what he was getting into. He was like, oh, my God, should I be here? Should I not be here? I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. He's in the waiting room waiting for his appointment, And then he comes in, he brings his fruit and flowers, has the ceremony, has the first experience of meditation. And he's done with his class. He comes out with a smile from ear to ear that he can't wipe off his face. He's going down the elevator in his socks, munching on his apple. He forgot his shoes. Then he realized that he had to go back and get his shoes. So it really changes people, and it changes them instantly, because they discover they've got this infinite place of inexhaustible bliss, inexhaustible power, energy, love, happiness, joy within themselves that they never knew they had access to. And guess what? It helps addictions. Alcohol, cigarettes, cocaine, heroin, you name it. Whatever the addiction is, melts away. It just melts away, because now you've got a new source of bliss, a new source of pleasure, a new source of satisfaction. So this is the antidote to the Rolling Stones song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Now you're having a continuous access to, at any time, at will, while you're on a plane, while you're in a train, while you're not driving a car, but as a passenger in the car, in a train station, in an airport, at home, when the children are playing, as long as you hopefully tell, if you're a business boss, tell your employees, don't bother me for 20 minutes, I'm in meditation. Take all the calls, turn your phone off. At home, get the pets away, get the dogs and the cats away. The children, tell them, leave me alone for a little while, right? So as long as external disturbances are out of the way, you just block that time twice a day, 20, 30 minutes. You just block that time and you go into it. And automatically, without changing a belief system, without having to believe that it will work, it doesn't matter if you believe it will work or not. It's like a light switch. If you have a light switch connected to good electricity and you have a lamp with good bulb in it, do you have to believe that it will turn on when you turn the switch? No. You just turn the switch and it comes on. It's like that. It's automatic. So we actually invite people to be skeptical. We invite them to come into this with no preconceived ideas, but you can come with preconceived ideas that it won't work, that it's probably no good, it's probably not going to work for me, I'm not good at it, my mind's too busy. Doesn't matter what you think. You can come in with any kind of idea, it will still work, because it's that simple. It is simple, natural process that works according to nature. And this ancient technique, which has been around for thousands of years, and it was very common in ancient golden ages, is now becoming more common, becoming more practiced. And so consciousness expands because of exposure to the infinite ocean of consciousness. So by infusing that unbounded ocean of consciousness into the nervous system directly, into the heart, into the mind, into the body, every day, every day, every day, every day, in alternation with daily life, right? Alternation with your daily work, your daily activity, daily study, whatever you're doing. Go ahead and be dynamic. Go ahead and continue living life as you did before, but by adding this practice, automatically consciousness starts going up, 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 day after day, week after week, month after month. And as that grows over time, it's very much like watering the roots of a tree. And now the tree is getting water, it's getting nourishment, it's got sunshine, it's going to grow, it's going to thrive, it's going to flourish. the flowers come, the fruits come. And unlike pursuing occult powers, this brings the powers eventually in their own season. So we do not recommend pursuing psychic abilities in particular or any particular kind of occult power, because eventually those will flower in higher states of consciousness in their own season naturally, and they will be guided by wisdom, they will be guided by love, they will be guided by harmony, and they will not cause any problem. They will not cause any violation of natural law. They will not cause any disconnect, and they will not cause any harm to anyone else. Those who pursue powers exclusively without going into pure consciousness find themselves usually obsessed with that power, which is very much like one branch of a tree growing all out of proportion to the rest of the tree. What's going to happen to it? It's going to fall over, it's going to uproot itself, and it's going to die. And that's what has happened to people who have doggedly, with great effort, pursued a particular power at the expense of everything else in their life. So we don't go for powers. What we go for is the single essence, the single waking up process. And then, and as that old saying goes, these things shall be added unto you. You know, you go first for that heaven, for that enlightenment, for that realization, and everything else comes, including better health, including better relationships, including better success in one's career, including improvements in everything. As that develops, then, of course, freedom improves, and freedom is the highest value, isn't it? Freedom from and freedom for. Freedom from every kind of enslavement, whether it's legal, financial, governmental, whether it's enslavement to habits, enslavement to one's own mind, to one's own thoughts, enslavement to mind control influences coming from machines, from the chemtrails, from the radioactive EMFs and all the other influences, all these enslaving influences out there, right, that scare people. One becomes free from all of that by pure consciousness, which, guess what, is invincible. Bridgette, have you ever heard of the Meissner effect?
No, I'm not sure of what the Meissner effect is, but maybe if you tell me, then I'll remember.
In physics, Meissner was a scientist in Belgium, I believe, and he came up with this experiment whereby he experimented with different fields of energy. And he had a way, I don't remember exactly how, but he had a way, physicists may know, to generate levels of coherence. And he found that an influence of lower coherence cannot penetrate a field of higher coherence. Like you said, I'm simplifying things. Well, it's because I'm not advanced as a physicist myself. So I have to explain it in simple terms. But maybe that's good for most people out there. But that's the basic concept, is that a field of higher coherence cannot be penetrated by an influence of lower coherence. So anyone who is interested in protection, invincibility, go into pure consciousness every day. Go into samadhi every day. And you will automatically start having a stronger force field around you. Not because you thought about it, not because you affirmed it, not because you went around saying, I am surrounded by white light. That's just a concept. That's just an idea. That's just a, affirmations have some limited value. But this is reality. This is actually a physics reality that is scientifically measurable. Have you heard about the experiments where crime rates went down in communities where 1% of the people started doing TM?
Yes, I think they had a big one 15 years ago in Washington, didn't they? Where they had thousands of people come and sit down and do transcendental meditation.
Right. So
and they said it lowered the overall, crime for that day by 30%, just their average crime.
Right. I was flown into Iran near the end of 1978 when the Shah was still in power, and there was a lot of violence in Iran. And I was part of what was called the World Peace Project. And there were about 100 men were flown to Tehran, Isfahan, and Abadan. And I was among 10 men who were sent to Abadan. And we were told, don't go sightseeing, don't be tourists, don't say that you're there to create peace, don't become political, just say you're just visiting, just as a tourist, but, just stay in the hotel and do your meditations. And that's what we did for 2 months. During that time, the violence went down by 78%. And when we left, it went back up again. This has been replicated in Thailand and Nicaragua and Rhodesia, which used to be Rhodesia. It's back to Zimbabwe now. It's been replicated in countries all over the world. War violence decreases, crime rates decrease, hospital admissions decrease, automobile accidents decrease, business bankruptcies decrease. Anything that is statistically measurable in the quality of life improves when a sufficient number of people in the area are going into pure consciousness. So it's been scientifically measured, it's been presented and published in peer-reviewed journals, including the Journal of Conflict Resolution at Yale University. Now, if you were to pick a university that is cabal, how much more cabal can you get than Yale, where you have Skull and Bones, secret society, and you have Oxford and Harvard, and you have all of these Ivy League universities. And they received this study in the 80s, and they looked at it and said, well, yeah, we don't have any argument with the numbers. They look good, but it violates our basic paradigm. We suggest you go back and do the study again with a thing called time series analysis, which eliminates arriving at the conclusion by chance or manipulation, and some other criteria. And then maybe we'll consider it for publication. So the scientists said, okay, and they did that, and Yale thought, well, the effect will probably disappear. In fact, it did not disappear. It was even stronger. And that blew their minds. And so they published it in December of 1988 in Journal of Conflict Resolution. And dozens, maybe hundreds of other journals all over the world have had to publish these studies as well. It's been presented to the Pentagon. It's been presented to heads of state. Here, we can bring world peace. Instead of spending $300 billion a year or $500 billion or whatever it is on war, why don't you take $1 billion, just $1 billion, and invest it in peace? Set up a community of people trained in this meditation, and you will have not only invincibility for your nation and peace, you will also see a turnaround of the economy. You will see more harmony and happiness, productivity, creativity, better health, less disease, less crime. All of these things have been proven to be statistically measurable where these groups have gotten together. Why? Because the unified field is that life source in all of creation. And when a human nervous system opens to it and integrates its consciousness with that, it flows in amplified waves into the atmosphere. Very much like this radio show radiates through electronics to everyone listening all over the world or all over the country. Even more profoundly, the unified field permeates everything. It's in the chair, it's in the house, it's in the air, it's in your food, it's in your body, it's in the stars and galaxies. It's omnipresent. And so the unified field is present everywhere, and when you enliven it by opening one's individual human awareness to it through the mechanism of the nervous system, it comes more into the third dimension experience and gets amplified. And that influence then is positive, 100% positive, and it's invincible. So the Meissner effect is very important because it means that one who accesses this directly every day is going to have protection and is going to have an attractor field. So it automatically goes two ways. It attracts good fortune, it repels bad things. What else would you like to talk about?
I was just listening. And thank you. I appreciate that. It's interesting, when you talk to people about their spirituality, because, their things pick up, because they're like really talking about who they are and what they're practicing. And it's interesting to listen to people, and there are all kinds of different groups. I mean, because you talked about that, during your spirituality topic, that there are groups in different kinds of cultures that practice different kinds of spirituality. And these people for, thousands and thousands of years live like in an ashram type setting together. And all they do is chant or meditate or do practices, to help the earth and to help the unified field, if you want. So there are so many of these, cultures out there that do different kinds of work, but it's all the same. The attention and the intention is the same, is to keep everything powered, to keep everything clean, to keep the energy systems, up and powered and good, keep them cleaned, and putting that data and information into the field, so that it can help balance it all and also help to intend things, in the now and into the future.
Bridgette, what I want everyone to know is if you've ever had any kind of concern about where the world is going, I am here to tell you it is going into an age of enlightenment. I had a very profound experience in Switzerland in 1976 with a long course there with Maharishi's people, where I was given unexpectedly, without warning, a time travel experience. I basically stepped into the future after the golden age had fully manifested on this planet. And I traveled around the United States, and I was blown away at the incredible beauty and incredible heavenly qualities. And all of us had this impression that, wow, we came such a long way in such a short time with so little turbulence, so smoothly. How could we have come this far? I mean, such a vastly different outer manifestation of conditions, physical conditions, as well as spiritual, in such a short period of time and without any big cataclysm. So this was shown to me as a knowingness. It was not a question. It was not a fantasy. It was not an imagination. It was not a wishful thinking. So I'm here to tell everyone that that is what is unfolding. I am watching it unfold. It is fascinating. As I watch world news and I see this coming, I see it unfolding. We are actually, now there's another thing. George Washington had a vision. He was shown, an angel showed him the future of the United States. Did you hear about that?
I did, but I forget what the story was.
In the 1700s, in the thick of the war and everything, when he was going through these, trials and ordeals of the battle against the British, he had a lot of suffering, but he also had a lot of divine intervention. And one of these experiences was the angels showed him the future of the United States, and they showed him the victory he was going to have with the war, which is what inspired him to carry on through to the end. And then they also showed him the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s, the Civil War. They showed him the 20th century with World War I, World War II, but at the same time, all these saints coming and higher consciousness developing and education advancing and prosperity growing and, scientific advancements in technology and improvements in conveniences and comforts. And so good and bad growing all at the same time, right? So evil and good just increasing and increasing and increasing. And this big, huge spiral of energy just building in the country, culminating in a kind of cloud, this big, dark cloud. And as the conflict reached a zenith, probably, I would say, around now, he saw this heavy, dark cloud hovering over the country where everyone's just there's this tremendous upwelling on the one hand of collective evolution of everything. I mean, physical evolution, educational, emotional, spiritual, physical, everything. But at the same time, diseases have never been more than before. And all these problems. And so everything kind of mixed together, a kind of negative and positive potpourri. And this creating a dark cloud hovering over the country and a kind of depression, kind of a lull. And you sort of feel that in today's mood, right? The collective mood. It's kind of a depression. It's kind of a collective, lull going on. And it's all over the place. It's in the news. There's no great happiness, no great ecstasy, no great bliss being talked about publicly or expressed. Hardly anywhere. So he saw all this, and then he saw this light. And it was coming from groups of people, certain individuals, certain groups, and it spread to more and more people and more people. It's kind of a light, kind of a glow, kind of a smoldering glow. And then it got brighter and brighter and brighter, and it kept spreading to more and more people. And eventually it created a kind of a critical mass, and suddenly a great explosion of light occurred. And it dispelled the dark cloud. And this display of splendor occurred after that, where light was everywhere and everything was bright and psychedelic in color and just beauty. And then he saw this light enlivening and energizing and rejuvenating the people and throwing off disease and throwing off war and throwing off slavery and, all these heavy influences. And a whole new economy, a whole new culture, a whole new golden age dawning from that point. This was in the early history books. It got taken out of by the time I was growing up, and probably you too. It was no longer in what I read as the history, but it was in the early 1800s history books, that vision that he had. So I very much feel that's where we're kind of at right now, that period. And I feel this light kind of building in the people right now. It's coming.
Awesome. All awesome.
And it's global. And many of the masters from the East have said America is the country that is to lead the world into the golden age. Many people would say, what? What are you talking about? Yeah, there's a hidden power here that is not seen by everyone. There's a hidden kind of under the surface potential that has been here for thousands of years. This has a destiny. America has a destiny. Maharishi said America will bring the dawn and the East will bring the day. So we have both an opportunity and a responsibility.
I agree. That's why I live my life the way that I live it.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the responsibility. For me, how I view that. I like something that you said earlier in the program, about, doing things where it's good for yourself and helping yourself. And it doesn't, also compromise yourself, where you don't have to, to do things where you don't have to actually compromise yourself in the mix of it. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. I was thinking about that, the word compromising yourself for anything. So,
right.
I think that's an important thing because you can't really, I had a really good dad who raised me. He was, a very interesting guy. And one of the things he always told me when I was young is that, you have to live your life by your own integrity, because that's the only thing that's going to matter to you in the end.
Would you pass a message to him for me, please? Tell him I said to thank him for bringing you into this world.
Well, he kept me in this world after, he raised me, my stepdad. But he was fantastic, and he was tough. And we didn't talk for 5 years, when I was early 20s, because I was so angry at him, and then, as I aged, I was like, wow, you were probably the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, because you kept me, all your lessons kept me on my feet. He used to say things that, that you have to get over the fact that sometimes life is fair and you have to work a little bit harder. That helped me a lot.
Yes.
And that, to keep educating yourself and growing and, make those kinds of choices, towards your consciousness. So he was pretty good. He was a pretty good guy to grow up with. But in the end, he's the one out of all my whole family that I always miss the most. And I wish I would have known how fantastic he was growing up, instead of being angry and fighting against him.
Yes.
But he taught me how to be a woman. My generation was I'm 50, but I call the bridge generation, because we were the ones that actually kind of had to figure out, the women just before us made all these decisions about, not staying in marriages and, maybe getting divorces and trying to find equality, in the system, in their own minds and their hearts, and education and job. And they were the ones that, directly fought against it and branched out, but there was no place for them really. So I was the generation where, I kind of had to learn how to get out of the whole female role, but then also how to adapt this whole male role. How do I fix my car? How do I, go to college and do all these things and make these kinds of decisions so that I can, move down the road in a really conscious way. So my generation, it was a little bit tough and bumpy and rocky for women. But if I hadn't had him in my life, I would have never even probably withstood any of it. I wouldn't have been able to withstand it, because it was a lot and it was tough. And I had to be tough. So, but I respect him a lot. He was a true Renaissance man. He could, he was pretty amazing.
It's beautiful to hear on public radio someone honoring their ancestors. That is so important.
Yeah. So, yep. So, anyway, I got a Skype message that maybe you might want to talk about the trust for like the last few minutes.
Yeah, we're running out of time.
We are. My show goes by really fast.
Yes, it does. It just flies by. We've covered some profound and important things, but please, everyone, go to freedomabounds.com and you will find ebooks there. I highly recommend that if you're interested in the trust, go to products. So you click on products at the top of the screen and then Natural Law Trust, and you will see an ebook available there that you can download. It's for sale on Amazon, but if you want to get it for free, go to freedomabounds.com. It's free there. And that ebook may bring a smile to your face because it's got some insights about asset protection that you might not have read quite that way anywhere else. We believe we have the best instrument in the world, so is to our knowledge, it is the best. If someone can find something better, let us know. But it has been proving itself for about 5 decades now with 100% success rate. Never been invalidated, never been penetrated. And it is something that's bringing freedom from the usual compliance and taxation and usual, requirements of statutory entities, and better than and superior to typical common law trusts. That's why we even changed the word to natural law. Anything else you think I should focus on in that realm for the moment?
No, I just got a message on Skype that you should cover it. So, but we have
as much as we have time for, yeah.
Yeah. So, but you could always come back on the show again in the future. You probably should come back on the show again in the future because you have lots of things to talk about.
Okay.
And I'm sure listeners would love to hear, more about, your thoughts and ideas and concepts and remedies and whatever else that you might have. Is there anything else that you would like to add in the last 4 minutes?
Well, I enjoy answering questions. So since you don't have a live call-in, do you have a way for people to send in their questions, like through Skype?
Yeah, there are people that can contact me with questions. But I was trying to think about some questions that I think people are really going to be interested in the debt elimination. And
yes.
So can you briefly give people an idea of like how does just a ballpark general, framework of how does that work? How does the debt elimination actually work? Like you have the debt and then what happens? Like kind of some steps so people can understand it a little bit better.
We have a one-time lifetime fee of $450. That's about the equivalent of the average couple of months of payments. Just pay that and get the system on the website under products and follow the instructions. And we are here for everyone who buys it. We have a customer service department that answers questions. We hold people's hands through the process. We understand it's intimidating. However, there's not a big learning curve. And actually, it's fairly simple. I would say it probably takes about an hour to put together the letters for one account. You can cancel unlimited debts for the rest of your life with that one system. We do ask that you get on the mailing list and have our newsletter once or twice a month because sometimes we come out with updates and improvements and news about it. And follow that, always get the latest version of our system. And you will have letters to send to the pretender lenders. And we address just about every kind of debt except secured debt like mortgages, but even those, inquire with us if you have problems. You want to either cancel the mortgage because of your understanding of the system and the fraud they're committing against you, or because you are afraid of facing foreclosure. We outsource that to some of the best in America who have pretty high success rates. I don't know of anyone with 100% success rate with house mortgage cancellation, but we have found the few that have as close as possible to that. But for unsecured debts like lines of credit, credit cards, now it has to be issued in the United States under the Federal Reserve System. If you're from another country or you have debts from other countries, we invite you to get with your lawyers, get our system, and convert it to the laws of your country. So this is for U.S.-based debts. The trust works everywhere in the world for all countries. The debt elimination system only for United States debts. And then student loans. Student loans are the big thing that is that is just a burden for millions of young people. Those cancel just as easily as credit card debts. The same scam is being run and the same system for canceling them. Same success rate. Look through our victory letters under the product section and look under our legal section at the court victories we've had. We've been posting a lot of them.
Awesome. So I got kind of some feedback about the link. Somebody said that they tried to Google it and it didn't work, but great guest. So it's www.freedom, right?
I don't know if you need to put a www in there. Okay. I would just put HTTP, okay. And don't put an S. Just HTTPS.
Abounds.com.
Right. In some cases, some people have gotten a warning when that, I don't know why, some parts of the internet say that it's not a secure certificate, just ignore that.
Or try a different browser like Firefox or something.
Try a different browser, yeah. freedomabounds.com should come up fine, and it leads to our home site, and that site then is secure.
Okay, so maybe the browser that's not nice. Google may not be nice.
Right.
So
right.
Try different. You might want to try a different browser. All right. Anyway, this has been Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. My guest has been Taansen, and we had a really great time talking about all kinds of things. And so we're going to see you again on Wednesday, noon Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for being on the show, and I will see you on Wednesday.
Revolution Radio,
Thank you.
freedomslips.com. We'll be right back.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.